Dear Luang Por, thank you for the teachings. How does wisdom develop samadhi? Thank you. Well, these are two parts of the same thing, the same whole. Wisdom, in Pali, translates as panya, but in English we sometimes use the word wisdom, insight, discernment, even knowledge. But wisdom is seen as knowledge or insight that helps remove the causes of suffering from the mind. Mental defilements rooted in greed, anger, delusion, and traced back to just ignorance of the Four Noble Truths. Samadhi means that the mind that is calm, firmly established, tranquil, and is characterized by the continuous presence of mindfulness, and it's wholesome in terms of the Buddhist path. What makes samadhi wholesome is panya, wisdom, because you can have something called miccha samadhi. You can concentrate your mind, but from an unwholesome route, maybe to harm somebody else or following greed to get something you want in a more sensual way. So wisdom and samadhi support each other as two parts of the Noble Eightfold Path. And the Buddha emphasized and repeated this over and over again. It says there's no jhana without insight and no true insight without jhana. So wisdom and samadhi are necessary for cultivating the path to nibbana. They support each other. They're not the only parts of this Noble Eightfold Path. One needs faith, one needs mindfulness, one needs effort, patience, goodwill, kindness, equanimity, and so on. There's many aspects of the path that we cultivate, many qualities of mind we cultivate, but these are two important aspects of meditation in particular. So, Luang Por Cha is often considered a teacher who emphasized, encouraged the practice of wisdom developing samadhi. States of samadhi most people find difficult to develop. Takes time, takes effort. And so wisdom is sometimes seen as a supportive factor for the arising of samadhi in the way it's almost like a shortcut, using insight and understanding to cut off the mental hindrances that prevent the mind stabilizing into states of samadhi. So wisdom is particularly developed through listening to the Dhamma and then reflecting on the Dhamma and developing insight into the Four Noble Truths, understanding what is dukkha, what is the cause of dukkha, mental defilement, craving, cessation of dukkha, the end of craving and attachment, and the path that leads to the end of suffering, the Noble Eightfold Path. So insight into the path, insight into the three universal characteristics of existence: impermanence, suffering, not self, gives rise to wisdom. And the best wisdom is considered to be wisdom arising out of the peaceful, calm mind, out of samadhi. But if one hasn't yet experienced or developed much samadhi, wisdom can help as well. So you might call this preliminary wisdom or initial wisdom, initial understanding of the teachings, initial understanding of the way things are from what we've heard and what we've thought through, reasoned through, can still be very valuable in our meditation practice. So we cultivate this quality we call yoniso manasikara, wise reflection, reasoned reflection. And we apply that as we're meditating, not all the time, because we're also developing samadhi, which brings the mind to a real place of stillness, going beyond thinking ultimately. But in the beginning, the initial stages, we can use thought, wisdom to help see what the obstacles we are facing are and finding skillful means to reflect on them and abandon them. So a traditional way of developing wisdom that will lead on to samadhi is contemplating the body, this physical form, turning your attention back to, you might say, analyze, break down the body into its component parts, the 32 parts, as we chant, and as you may already know, seeing the way that the body is made up of all these different component parts, the solid parts, liquid parts, the skin, the bones, the hair, the nails, the teeth, the liquid parts, the urine, the blood, the snot, and so on. And particularly developing insight into the impermanent and impersonal nature of these body parts, seeing the body as not self. That's something one will have to contemplate over and over again, and using both insight and then the states of calm that arise from that contemplation. We call that wisdom developing samadhi, because it helps us to let go of many, many things. Greed, anger, delusion, conceit, jealousy, fear, and so on. Many different defilements can be abandoned by contemplating the body in this way, which leads to the mind gathering into states of one-pointedness, samadhi. It's not the only way, of course, but it's one example and one very effective way. So any meditation object you're developing in the range of what we call samatha objects to calm the mind, to develop samadhi. The aim is to bring the mind to a point where it's no longer bothered, affected by the 5 hindrances, and it's experiencing one-pointedness, peace, calm, stability. So wise reflection on different aspects of the body and mind can help there. And often can save you a lot of time when you're focusing maybe just on the impermanent nature of thought and feeling as well as the body. Helps you to set things aside that normally your mind is getting caught up with and prevents samadhi from arising. Some people just reduce their practice of wisdom developing samadhi down to a single word like impermanence, or it's not sure, it's uncertain, or something similar. And there's room for creativity here. And by reciting a word such as it's uncertain or not sure over and over again, not only is one developing insight into the impermanent characteristic of thoughts and memories and feelings, but also it becomes like a samatha object where you just one-point the mind on that one word. People, for these one-word meditations, they often choose a Pali word. It seems to resonate more because it's maybe more closely linked to the Buddha. So we might say anicca, 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 anicca. But ultimately it's important to see that wisdom and samadhi work together, and they're really inseparable. Because sometimes you hear people sort of make these general statements. They say, oh, he just practices samadhi, he doesn't have any wisdom, or she just contemplates developing wisdom but has no samadhi. That kind of statement probably is not very accurate, because most people who meditate will be developing at least some samadhi and some wisdom. But it's true, sometimes we get out of balance and we have a lot of wisdom and not much samadhi, or quite a lot of samadhi, not much wisdom yet. But also there are the other faculties and qualities to develop as well, which are also important in this balancing process. So mindfulness is essential, like at the center of our meditation, just paying attention and recollecting the Dhamma of one sort or one object or another. And one needs faith as well, faith in the Buddha and in the path of practice. That will also help to steer your practice in the right direction. Another question. Ajahn, can you please teach us how to meditate on the four elements? It's quite a big topic for a question, but in brief, the four physical elements are earth, or solidity in the body, water, or liquidity or cohesion, like the glue between the solid parts. So like cells have a lot of water in them, and that actually links and glues the solid bits together. Then the air element, literally the air we breathe in and out, but also that any forms of gas, different kinds of gases, and spaces around things as well, filled with air, with different forms of air, and that helps with, we say, extension. So it's often translated as extension, meaning like when you move an arm or a leg, partly that movement is facilitated or possible mechanically because of the presence of air element. You don't have to be a physicist, but sometimes reading up a bit about these things can help. The last element is fire or temperature. So of course when there's not much fire in the body, meaning temperature is low or you feel cold, so fire doesn't just mean heat alone, it also means a lack of heat. It's just on a sliding scale, just like the temperature for the weather forecast. Sometimes it's hot, sometimes cold. These are all parts of the heat element or fire element. And heat has an effect on the body. It not only warms us up and is necessary, and when you go to see a doctor, if you're ill, often they take your temperature because you may have a fever or you may have very low temperature with some illnesses. Temperature is an important part of the bodily function to keeping a healthy body. And things work together, react together well because of temperature. Digesting food produces heat. When you're ill, it can produce heat, or you can lose heat. When you exercise, you produce heat. Sometimes when you don't exercise, you lose heat. Obviously, external temperature affects heat in the body. And heat also cooks, doesn't it? You cook things with heat, so your body is cooking, and that's part of the aging process. Gradually all your cells in your body is being cooked away there, and partly it's through the process of heating up and cooking that you get older. Anyway, it's another one of these four physical elements. But even the mind, the consciousness, vijnana, is considered an element, vijnana dhatu. So in the beginning, contemplating the elements, the four elements, I would recommend just thinking them through, revising what you know about them, sort of in the way I was just suggesting, just describing them. So you can read, listen to talks, read, think about the elements so that you're getting an idea of what they are, how they manifest in the body. Visualize them as well. You can visualize, say like, visualize the hair on your head. A single hair is primarily made up of the earth element, but not entirely, but it's a good representative of the earth element because it's solid. And then a part of the body that's more the liquid element, so it could be urine or tears, for example. Visualize different parts of the body and the characteristic of the particular element that is most prominent in that part of the body. So partly you can visualize, you can think things through, so in a discursive way you go over information, memories and understandings that you already have. But ultimately, as a meditation, you want to reduce things down to a very simple object that you can focus on over and over again to one point in the mind. So in these four elements, earth element is, in Pali, is patavi, water element is apo, fire element is tejo, air element is vayo. And you can recite patavi, apo, tejo, vayo over and over again, all four elements, one after another, 4 words, 4 Pali words, or earth, water, fire, air, in whatever order you prefer. You can recite the Pali or the English over and over again of all 4 elements, or you just pick one element that you like. Patavi, earth. So patavi, patavi, patavi. And you reduce it down to just a 1-word meditation, but that word has meaning for you because you've thought it through, you've visualized things, and maybe later on when your mind is more calm, again you go around exploring the element in the body, visualizing the different parts of the body as that element and visualizing that element in the body. And then not only in the body, but then outside the body as well. So, you see water, you turn a tap on and there's water, or you see a puddle of rain or a pond. You pause and contemplate, that is water element. You see something solid, a rock or a piece of ground, the earth, that is the earth element. So not only internally but also externally, in other people's bodies, in the world around you, you can contemplate the elements. Again, in the beginning it's a more discursive practice, thinking it through, but gradually as you're more peaceful, maybe just observing elements. And then you develop it further by contemplating the 3 characteristics. These elements are changing. Therefore we get aging, sickness, death, because elements don't just stay fixed together. The body is a group of elements together, and it ages, it gets sick, things go wrong. When you get sick, the elements are out of sync, or something's not quite right with them. They're reacting together, and something's wrong. Maybe something's introduced, like a bug or a virus, or there's an injury or something. The elements are changing, aging, ultimately they break apart. All of this can be observed and contemplated, partly using imagination as well. So you just create, an image of yourself when you die. What happens to this body? It separates, doesn't it? The skin, the bones, the hair, the blood, everything, and even the heat disappears. The air disappears, goes back to the air. And these 4 elements are impersonal. Ultimately, they're just parts of nature. This is all part of the contemplation. And many people find this brings them a great sense of peace, happiness, both peace from understanding, but also from the one-pointedness, this state of samadhi that comes through contemplating the meditating on the elements. Usually you pick one element that resonates with you, and that becomes your main meditation, your primary meditation. Ajahn, after a few years of putting my best effort into practicing Dhamma, sitting, walking meditation, reading, listening to Dhamma on a daily basis, sometimes when I'm really busy with work and family, I feel my earnest passion towards the practice of Dhamma fade. How do I sustain my diligence in the practice of Dhamma? Please advise. Short answer is keep doing it, keep going, don't give up. One thing that seems to be a very recurring experience with many meditators and practitioners of Dhamma is that when initially they practice, it's new, it's interesting, so they put forth a lot of effort and there's things to learn, so there's curiosity and that interest sustains them, finding out, learning things. Over time, a lot of Dhamma practice seems to be kind of repetitive, watching the breath go in and out, reflecting on sila, practicing generosity. Often many practices, many things you do are repetitive. Chanting or listening to Dhamma talks, you often hear the same sorts of information, same words, same concepts over and over again. And you'll notice people are always looking for a new Dhamma teacher or teaching to stimulate interest, new stories, new reflections and so on. That's something to be aware of because it can be conditioning or setting you up for feeling bored or uninterested later because you can't sustain the newness of the Dhamma all the time, the new story, the new reflection, the new teacher, the new meditation technique, experiences of bliss. They don't always keep coming, do they? You don't keep experiencing them. So it seems like you get bored and then you turn away from the Dhamma or feel that you're not getting much from it. So you have to also maybe develop the appreciation of the ordinary and keep the bigger picture in mind that this practice of Dhamma, which involves a certain amount of repetition. You don't judge it in a worldly way. It's not a form of entertainment. It's not a sport. It's not sensual. It's training, cultivating certain qualities in your mind. And that requires effort, patient effort, mindfulness, insight. And you have to use the repetition to keep bringing up very skillful states of mind. And sometimes that takes quite a lot of effort and a lot of patience. You need to keep practicing when you're feeling tired, ill. Life is bringing you a lot of challenges. Things are not all going well in your work or in your life, your family and so on. Keeping the interest to learn from your experience, even when things seem to be very boring or repetitive, or you're facing physical challenges or mental pain. Taking it all as part of the teaching, part of the practice, learning from everything. So even the very feeling of losing interest in the Dhamma or feeling bored with the Dhamma or uninspired, learn about that. What conditions that? Where is it coming from? How long does it last? If you're feeling bored listening to a Dhamma talk, say, where's that coming from? How long does it last? Do you feel bored the entire time or just a little bit for some period of it, then that fades? So making your feeling of boredom or lack of inspiration or the mind that is turning away from the Dhamma, even that is an object to be learnt from, and you're observing it in a more dispassionate, detached way where you can by bringing up mindfulness and reflecting. Everything is impermanent, so even feelings of lack of enthusiasm, apathy, dullness, boredom are also to be contemplated. But try not to be always looking for the high or the special experience or the bliss or the special insight often the insights and the peaceful meditations and the pleasant experiences come when you're not expecting them, when you set aside the desire. So learning to just accept the ordinary, bring up the good qualities of mindfulness, effort, keeping precepts and so on, and then trusting that out of this effort and continuous practice you make, results will come. But how long, how quick, how slow, in what form, you can't always predict. So set aside all this sort of judging your practice in terms of time. I've been meditating for so many years and I should know by now, I should be enlightened by now. That's setting you up to suffer. Try to put that aside and just accept, I'm practicing now. That's your good opportunity, so appreciate that and just put your effort into the practice, developing more mindfulness, reflecting on the Dhamma, cultivating compassion, generosity and so on. Keep coming back to the wholesome inputs, the skillful inputs as much as you can, putting up with any moods and feelings that you experience, but then keep going rather than giving up. In the end, when you have the thought, I just want to give up the Dhamma, or I can't be bothered, stop and ask yourself, what is that? It's just a thought, isn't it? I can't be bothered, or I'm not inspired, or I don't want to do this. These are just thoughts, and if you see them with some mindfulness, some insight, they're just a thought that arises, passes away, and then you can carry on. The thought is gone. So try to make everything part of your practice, even that feeling of no inspiration, no passion for your practice, and learn from it. And there's other things that will help, associating with fellow practitioners and particularly teachers who can help to remind you of the benefits of the practice, explain things that you maybe don't understand, give you energy, give you inspiration. So external sources, online or living teachers would be best of all. And trying things out as well, being a bit creative, go on a retreat, change your meditation approach, your attitudes, techniques and so on. Sometimes we have to be creative in our practice, try new things, and this can also help. Next question. In society, we believe we can make merit for our deceased ancestors by lighting an artificial light or a candle in a local temple for them, or donate rice to the poor, or donate money on behalf of our deceased relatives to some good cause. However, in my mother's eyes, this is a big taboo because she thinks daughters should not do something like this because this is the son's right or duty. It's his responsibility. What should I do? Thank you. Well, the practice of Dhamma is not limited to one gender. Of course, in the world of the society, in the conventional world, sometimes people do attach strongly to their gender and roles, gender roles and responsibilities. So some traditional views are that the man should do the act of merit or lead the act of making merit for the dead, and the women follow along. But of course, there are many women who make better merit or more successful merit than men, because in the end it's up to your mind, isn't it? It's what qualities are you cultivating in your mind, how skillful is your mind. And sometimes women have more effort, energy, faith, more wisdom, more skill, more compassion and so on than men. Not always, but these things are not gender bound. So even if people around you, you might say people with more old-fashioned or out-of-date views than you, or misunderstandings, have their views and they tell you what their views are. Okay, well, you can listen kindly and respectfully, but that doesn't mean to say you can't do your bit for making merit for the dead. You can also donate and share that merit, do it in the name of the dead, or remember some dead relative or friend by doing an act of kindness, charity, some act of compassion, keeping precepts, meditating. You know, when you're meditating, you're on your own maybe, or you're in a group of people, but you're sitting there with your eyes closed on your own. It doesn't matter anymore whether you're male or female. You can dedicate the fruits of your meditation to someone who's passed away. No one else will even know about it. So a lot of our merit making is fairly personal, private. So even if other people have their views on who should make merit or not, it's still a fairly personal thing. You can make merit every breath, every moment of every day, whoever you're with, or whether you're on your own. But partly it's an attitude thing. You're making your practice into one of creating skillful karma as much as possible, which is the same as merit, more or less, and then dedicating it to the dead, remembering the dead, honouring the dead. We can do that, and certainly women can do it just as well as men. But have some compassion for someone who may have their strong views about society and the proper way things are done. Well, try to accommodate their views, but it shouldn't limit you in your own practice, I don't think. Just carry on in the best way you can. Maybe the formal merit making is led by some male member of the family. You might have to accept that just to keep the peace. But it doesn't stop you from developing your own merit in your own way at that time with them as a group, or on your own later, or in a different way later. So I think there's a lot of flexibility and room for creativity here, but the important thing is bringing merit up in your mind. So of course if you're getting angry with someone because they have strange or different views than you, or out-of-date views, be careful, because if you're getting angry with them or disparaging because they are out of date, your merit, your goodness in your mind, your right view, your wholesome states of mind are slipping away at that moment. So it's something you have to look at on different levels, your own state of mind, your own attitudes, and then of course trying to understand, appreciate other people's attitudes, but without falling into unwholesome states of mind such as arrogance, conceit, anger, and so on. That would be my suggestion. Further question, what role does one's requirement to fulfill duties and responsibilities play in the Buddhist path? I guess you mean duties and responsibilities to the family in particular, maybe to the extended family. I assume this is what you're talking about. I may be wrong, or it could be just to a partner, whether you're in a marriage or some relationship. Well, this is part of our path, taking responsibility for our relationships, cultivating wise, skillful relationships towards parents, partner, husband, wife, children, siblings, work colleagues, whether they're above us, supervisors and managers and CEOs and people in management positions, or people under us if we're in a management position, people who work and we have to advise them and oversee them, or just co-workers, neighbours, fellow citizens of the country and so on. We have relationships and duties in many areas of life. And the Buddha encouraged us to perform various duties and responsibilities with wisdom, with a wholesome state of mind, sincerely. But at the same time, you also have a duty to your practice of the Noble Eightfold Path, which shouldn't really bring up too much conflict with those duties that are, you might say, are skillful and natural parts of life. So if you have a family, you have parents, well, you might have your parents' age, and you might be needed, or there may be a need to look after them or help them, certainly to assist them in smaller or greater ways. That's a very natural duty. They've helped you when you were born, when you were brought into the world. Maybe you give something back. And say the Buddha encouraged us to not only try to meet the needs of our parents materially, but then also spiritually, bringing them to practice Dhamma, bringing them to hear the Dhamma, have opportunities to practice. That could apply to children or to siblings or friends or even work colleagues. If there's anyone you feel you can help to practice the Dhamma, well, encourage them. That's one of the nice things about living in a Buddhist country like Thailand, for instance. Sometimes some well-meaning person in a company organises everyone to go on a trip to the temple to hear the Dhamma and make merit, make offerings. It's a very common thing to do that in the name of some company or group of people, group of teachers. Or even in Thailand you get groups of policemen going on retreat, keeping the 8 precepts, quitting smoking and drinking for a week, and they go on a meditation retreat. All kinds of things, between fellow workers in a company or some career, some path, work environment, they arrange to practice the Dhamma in one way or another. It's all possible. But the idea is not to clash with your practice in the sense, not to overdo the duties and responsibilities to the point where you're burnt out or that leads you into unwholesome behaviour. Sometimes we get so angry because we feel obliged to help somebody, particularly in the family maybe, and they're not, by helping them we feel we're losing out on our own practice. And if it makes you very angry, well, that's something you have to investigate, isn't it? See what you can do to incorporate helping other people in the family or fulfilling various responsibilities such as earning a living with practicing the Dhamma on the level of dana, precepts, our general conduct, try to conduct yourself in an ethical way. Meditation, trying to find time to have time for meditation, developing mindfulness in daily life. When you apply the Buddhist practice to your daily life, as it were, there shouldn't be too much clash. If you're using the principles of the Noble Eightfold Path, developing right view, mindfulness, there shouldn't be too much clash with your family and work responsibilities. But it's a learning process. As long as you're learning, you keep learning how to practice with these different duties and responsibilities, things will get better. You'll become wiser, better looking after your mind as you practice towards the family, towards your work. You'll become wiser, more skillful in doing it as part of your Dhamma practice. And if you're in a position, maybe one day you go off and live in a monastery, you keep the 8 precepts long term, or go on a long retreat, or even ordain. It could happen. Dear Luang Por, thank you for answering our questions. Is there a difference between the nirvana attained by a Buddha and an Arahant? Our Lord Buddha has spent countless eons of rebirth practicing to gain perfection and then liberation. However, for a stream enterer, all he needs is a maximum of 7 lifetimes to gain the same liberation. Why is this even possible? Thank you. Well, one thing you can say is Nibbana, whether it's for a Buddha or an Arahant. Could be male, female, ordained. Technically you could say even unordained person. Nibbana is always Nibbana. The qualities of Nibbana being the unconditioned, the unborn, the uncreated, freedom from suffering, never varies. But a Buddha, we say, has been building barami for so many lifetimes, accompanying their enlightenment experiences. They're self-enlightened, they're Sambuddha. They gain all kinds of special knowledges, psychic powers, the ability to know many, many things, and of course to teach. It's probably the greatest ability of a Buddha is to teach others, teach this same path to enlightenment, to awakening to others. Any other Arahant experiences Nibbana, the mind free from the mental defilements, free from suffering, but they're called a Savaka and Arahant. They're a student of the Buddha. Their experience of Nibbana is the same. There's no more rebirth, but they don't have the same ability to teach the Dhamma and to help people in different ways. But they may have very great qualities, so what we call the cha abhinyo, the Arahant who has all the abhinya, the psychic knowledges, may have amazing ability with their mind, read the minds of others, know the future, know the past, recollect past lives, and so on. They may have amazing psychic ability which can help them teach the Dhamma. Whereas Tevicho Arahant has some psychic ability, can recollect past lives, know the people experiencing karma, the fruits of their karma, where they're reborn perhaps, but more limited. The Sukha Vipassako Arahant is also an Arahant, but they have much more limited psychic powers. They may have some psychic ability, but their samadhi is kind of considered just enough. They develop samadhi and then insight into the impermanent and not self nature of their five khandhas, and maybe not much psychic ability at all. So you might say it's the difference between Sariputta and Moggallana. Sariputta, in the time of the Buddha, probably did have some psychic ability, but very limited. He had great insight, very great analytical knowledge and ability to explain the Dhamma, contemplate the Dhamma. Whereas Mahamoggallana was also an Arahant but had great psychic ability, knew many things and could perform many miracles and so on through his meditation. So Arahants can vary in their general abilities to teach, to help others, but the insight into not self and the liberating insight into not self and Nibbana is the same for all of them. But the reason it's different, you might say, is just the length of time is one very important factor. Maybe also character as well. Some people incline more towards wisdom, some more to samadhi, and with samadhi you get psychic ability. Buddhas have been developing barami over a much longer period than Savaka Arahants. Therefore they have a lot more special knowledge and a lot more ability to help others out of their compassion. They're kind of motivated by the compassion to help all beings be free from suffering. And they've been doing it longer, so they're better at it. And also, you say stream enterer only needs a maximum 7 lives. That's when the mind has experienced the fruits of stream entry, Sotapanna, there's no more than 7 more lives to experience. But that doesn't mean the whole preceding period, nothing was happening. It's not like suddenly you're Sotapanna, oh, only 7 lives. Sounds good, doesn't it? Oh, the quick way to Nibbana. But that Sotapanna, that person, will have been practicing probably for many, many lives, innumerable lives already. It's just they don't count. In the scriptures they're not mentioned. So it seems like they don't count, so you can ignore that and just talk about these last 7 lives. And of course, Sotapanna may have very concentrated barami and practice in great depth, and they only need 1 life. There are the fast-track Ehipichi Sotapannas. And just in 1 life they reach Nibbana already. But don't forget, the Sotapanna will have been practicing beforehand for a long time. It just doesn't just happen. It's not a random thing. It doesn't just come out of nowhere. Much as we would like. Everyone would like that. Luang Por, many thanks for the teachings. I have 3 questions that I hope you could answer. 1. When the Buddha was a bodhisattva, did he meet Buddha Dipankara? Why do bodhisattvas choose to achieve enlightenment through Buddhahood instead of Arahanthood? Well, as I just explained, out of compassion, really, for all beings, the goodness, the wisdom, the compassion of a Buddha reaches more beings than an Arahant. So it's this, they're driven by the desire to help all beings to be free from suffering. And they do it for a long time. So like Dipankara Buddha, who was living a long time ago, our Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, in that life was Sumedha, a hermit, we believe, and made his resolution to become a Buddha, and then set himself on a journey that took eons and eons and eons, a long, long, long time, before he finally became a Buddha. But in that time, he's perfected all the baramis, the 10 baramis on the 3 levels, to the point where when he becomes a Buddha, he's able to help many, many people. Whereas an Arahant also has similar qualities of wisdom, compassion, and all the 10 baramis are perfected, but not quite for as long or as intensely as a Buddha. You might call them a little Buddha, or they're like similar to a Buddha, but not quite as wide-reaching in their influence. They don't establish the religion from the beginning. They follow a Buddha, and they will help some people, but not as many as the Buddha. Nevertheless, an Arahant is an amazing being, such as Luang Por Man in northeast Thailand. Not only he became enlightened, but he had so many enlightened students. He had a huge influence on modern Buddhism in spreading what we'd call the true Dhamma, Satya Dhamma, the path that leads to Margapala Nibbana. He had a huge influence. We call him an Arahant. So don't make the mistake of thinking, an Arahant is only so good or not very good or something. That's not true at all. An Arahant is amazing, an amazing blessing to the world. We need more of them. A Buddha is even more profound in their influence because, of course, they're self-enlightened. Question 2. Do all Buddhas teach the Four Noble Truths? Yes. Are these teachings similar? Yes. We're kind of speaking theoretically here because we can't remember past lives and living with different Buddhas, but we assume that their teachings all center around the explanation of the Four Noble Truths. But depending on how long each Buddha has been building barami, some Buddhas have been building barami longer than other Buddhas, so even Buddhas can vary. And the ones that have been building barami longest, their explanations of Dhamma may actually be briefer because the people they have built barami with over many, many lifetimes are more ready or suitable to teach because they've been practicing longer themselves, both the Buddha and the students of some of these Buddhas. Our Buddha, Gautama, Siddhartha Gautama, was we say, the shortest period of time possible for a being to attain Buddhahood after becoming a confirmed bodhisattva. 4 asankhyas and 100,000 kalpas. So our Buddha teaches slightly less than some of the other Buddhas, less people. So there is a variation between Buddhas, they say. And this is all according to the text. As I said, we don't really know ourselves. So I just take these as reflections, this information. But their teachings are going to be similar. Some Buddhas will also proclaim the Vinaya and set up a very large Sangha and the means of the Sangha. Some Buddhas don't really teach the Vinaya so much. So conditions in the time of each Buddha may vary a little, partly, mainly dependent on the amount of time they personally have been building Bharami, but also it depends on the world around them. So some Buddhas don't have other teachers around, they just teach Buddhism and everybody follows the Buddha. Other Buddhas, like our Buddha, will be explaining to people the path of the Noble Eightfold Path to Nibbana at the same time as other teachers teaching other things are present in the world. So you might say it has to work a little bit harder because there are many different competing views in the world for our Buddha when he was around. Last question from this one. For a person who has achieved 4th jhana, can he still see his past lives after being reborn in the Brahma realm so that he could continue his Dhamma practice? We don't know. You don't know any Brahmas in the Brahma realm, I assume. Most people don't, do they? But if you've achieved 4th jhana, but you're not yet enlightened and you die, there's a high, but not guaranteed, but a high possibility that you'll be reborn in a Brahma realm. It may be a Rupa Brahma realm, so if you're already attained Anagami, a once returner, it'll be one of the Suttavasa, the 5 Suttavasa Brahma realms. In which case you are just continuing your Dhamma practice in that realm until the enlightenment is attained and you don't come back. But other Brahmas may not yet be Arya-Pugalas, they may have developed great samadhi skills, Rupa jhanas, but not the path, the Noble Eightfold Path. So they may or may not continue practicing the Dhamma in that realm. They may or may not recollect past lives. It's not absolutely guaranteed that every Brahma, person who's attained 4th jhana, recollects past lives, but they have that potential. If they turn their mind to train to recollect past lives, they have the potential for that. It's quite possible. And indeed, some Brahmas will pursue the path of psychic ability more than the path of vipassana insight. You might say a slower way to Nibbana. So some Brahmas are made up of people who have meditated, attained 4th jhana, die, become a Brahma, but they don't have Maggaphala, don't have insight, and they're developing skills of the mind to do with psychic ability more than vipassana insight. That's possible. So you get a whole variety of Brahmas. Arupa Brahmas, those who have developed the higher jhanas, the Arupa jhanas, can't practice the Dhamma because they don't have a body, they don't have ears and eyes, they don't have eyes to read the suttas and ears to hear the talks. So they're very peaceful, refined state of mind, and they have to wait until they're reborn again before they can carry on their practice. So you might call that the slow, blissful way. So there's variation between Brahmas, and not all Brahmas even have right view, some have wrong view perhaps. But they will definitely have a lot of skills and a lot of Bharami in certain areas of their practice. So not to be looked down on, but for clarity we should be aware that Brahmas are not all the same. Each Brahma is not all the same. Lumpur, if a lay meditator has been pregnant for a couple of weeks and it's only cells without organs, and the meditator decides to take pills to prevent the cells from forming into a baby, is it bad karma? Or similar, to prevent life from being born? Her intention is not to bring life into suffering of this world. Well, the karma of killing or taking life is fulfilled when there is life, when there is the intention to take life, end life, and then an action is taken and the result is that the life ends. So it sounds from your description that is happening. The Buddhist belief is that at conception, fertilized egg, sperm meets with the egg, it's fertilized, consciousness is waiting at that moment to join. So consciousness is already there, booked its place. There's a whole queue of consciousnesses, because birth as a human being is such a sought after thing. There's a lot of beings in other invisible realms we can't see, and therefore this gives rise to doubt. There's a whole queue of beings waiting to be born. So as soon as there's a fertilized egg, somebody has grabbed that, my egg, my chance to be born. And to be honest, if you're an unenlightened, ordinary person, you probably would be the same. When you die, you don't want to die. Nobody wants to die, do they? So therefore, they have this desire going into their next life. And if they're in one of these unseen realms of devas or ghosts or any other realm, they're going to want human birth, because human birth is a very suitable birth for making merit, making barami, improving your spiritual practice. So it's a sought after birth. So we have this desire when we die, that we don't want to die, we want to cling to life. That goes into next life. So then we're looking for an opportunity to be born. So as soon as an egg is fertilized, there's a whole queue of consciousnesses saying, me, me. And you know how people are when they're waiting for the bus. Some are more polite and some are not. And some will force their way to the front of the queue. So there's a real battle to get in there, and it's determined by karma as well, the karma of the being to be born, whether they have karma with the parents, karma to be born, they have enough good karma to be born as human, and so on. There's a whole range of factors. But that takes place. So in Buddhism, the belief is any form of contraception or termination after birth is a form of killing. You may say the consequences are different. Killing a small group of cells is not the same as a baby that's been born. Say, well, you may say that, but the fact is a form of killing has taken place by the Buddhist definition. And put yourself in the shoes of that being wanting to be born. Even if, at one point we were all just a group of little cells in our mother's womb. If someone gave us the choice at that moment and said, do you want to carry on or are we going to flush you out? I'm not being flippant here, I'm just trying to paint a picture. Well, you would say, no, I want to be born. Because we're here now, you definitely wanted to be born because you're here and you're still alive. So if you'd been terminated, you wouldn't have been happy about it. And that's part of the karma. If you terminate even a group of cells, you're cutting off that being's chance to survive and live. So there's karma made. If you choose to do that, that's your choice. But you have to accept there'll be some karma, negative karma made. And all the sort of evidence I've seen, anecdotal evidence, even maybe some statistics as well, it can be quite traumatic. Even a very briefly formed embryo terminated can lead to a lot of trauma and unhappiness for the mother and maybe the father as well in the future after that, if the termination takes place. It doesn't just all end there. We may convince ourselves that that's the end of it all, but often there's a certain regret, sadness that may follow. And of course there's a being that's been terminated and they're not going to have the chance to live now, so they may not be very happy about that. As I said, if it was you, put yourself in their shoes, you'd be frustrated, you'd be angry. Oh, why did they terminate me? All of this is to be factored into the karma of that action. So I understand you're saying the world is suffering, don't want to bring a being in, but you're already adding to the suffering by terminating the being, I would say. But we're talking very hypothetically here, so I would just think about it for yourself, whether it's really the necessary course of action. Another similar question: if a lay practitioner picks up eggs, some of which have been fertilized, and then cooks all of them, does this person break the non-killing precept? Possibly. We don't know those eggs, are they fertilized or not? Are they capable of hatching into a chick or not? I don't know either. We're talking hypothetically here, but possibly, yes, possibly there is some killing there. But you also look at intention, so I'm sure when you buy some eggs, you're not thinking of killing, you're thinking of buying eggs, cooking eggs. So intention is part of it as well, like in terminating a pregnancy, there's an intention there, a clear intention. You have to do things and want to do that usually. So that's a stronger kind of karma than, say, eating an egg that may be fertile or not. I don't know the science, the biology of that, how possible it could be. I assume it could be possible in some situations, but maybe there's no intention to kill, it's just by chance there was a fertile egg in the box. So it's unfortunate. So maybe some small karma is made, but I imagine the person doesn't have the intention to kill when they eat eggs. That's a bit of a different situation. So, there are some answers tonight. Some of these questions are quite kind of profound and deep and probably require more explanation than a short Q&A session can provide, but maybe I've just pointed you to something you can research and think about it more over time. But I'll leave it there tonight.